It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Lina Amato. Lina Kenter was born in Rhodes Island.
1936. We came originally from Spain, and my mother came from Italy. My father born in Rhodes, and lots of connection with Turkey, but my grandfather had a business in Turkey. So there's a Turkish background there as well. And in 1936, we were walking on the Mandraki. Mandraki is almost like the seaport promenade. We used to walk every evening there after work when we heard that the war had broken out. And I was only 3 years old. And I wasn't interested that war had broken out. It didn't mean anything to me. I was lying I started wanting my ice cream, and I just lay on the ground there kicking. I want my ice cream, I want my ice cream. And my parents were very distraught because they knew now they were stuck in the island, they wouldn't be able to get out of there. And all I wanted was my ice cream, and eventually I got my ice cream. That's why I always get my way. So that's my first recollection of the war. And it was then under the Italian occupation. Things were not so bad. But as children, we were not allowed to go to school. There were the racial laws. So my parents, together with other 3 families, who had 3 boys, decided that we could carry on our schooling in one of the children's home. It was very big, also by the Mandraki. So we had a private teacher, a Jewish teacher, of course, because she couldn't teach at the school. So the 4 of us and the teacher were having our classes there. We were wearing the school uniform, taking part in the school curriculum. And then we had, there were lots of pictures of that area. Had Purim parties, end of year parties. So I was the only girl with 3 boys there. Sadly, the 2 boys and the teacher were deported to Auschwitz and were killed there. So then the Germans came. There were quite a few incidents worrying us about it, but it wasn't so bad until the Gestapo came. And they issued an order that older men from 16 upwards had to go into those barracks, army headquarters. And then the next day, the women had to join, women and children had to join them with a suitcase and all the jewelry. So that's when my story starts. My parents had the Italian friends. The name is Girolamo and Bianca Soggiu. They were very, very brave people. There were teachers there, teachers of Italian, and they listened to the radio, they knew what was going to happen to us. So my father took me to them and said, will they keep me? Well, they went into those headquarters, and of course they did. And I spent, I can't remember now how long, but while they had to go into those headquarters, I was with this Italian family. Now, my granny had kept her Turkish passport. Although when the Italians came, most of the Jews became Italian, including my parents. But my granny, due to her connection, her husband had died by then, and the connection of my grandfather's business in Turkey, she decided to keep her Turkish passport. She had said, I was born Turkish, I'm going to die Turkish. And this was a fatal decision. because this Bianca Soju and Girolamo approached my granny and told her, listen, you're under Turkish protection because Turkey was not at war then, and you are not to present yourself in those headquarters. And we heard that she was taken to the Turkish consul to present her case, and that we were saved through him. But there's another story to that, because when we were saved by the Turkish consul, but when we were in Rhodes Island to commemorate 70 years of the deportation of the Jews, my son Gary asked me what happened to Bianca and Girolamo Soju. And we didn't know, we had lost touch. There was no internet then, and my parents never spoke about it. So he looked up in the internet, and this chapter came out, which was written by Bianca Soju from a book she wrote about her memoirs, and the book is titled Da Rodi a Tavolara, from Rhodes to Tavolara. Tavolara is a little place in Sardinia where they had moved to from Rhodes. And that chapter opened up showing, and the chapter was entitled The Deportation of the Jews from Rhodes. And there, in Italian, I started translating to my family because we were all there in Rhodes, sitting at a cafe. And I started translating. When I came to that part, it shows that my father, with tears in his eyes, had taken me to them and to say, would you please take care of my only daughter? In fact, they had just lost a baby boy that was born prematurely and died. And he said to them, I'm so happy that I don't have a baby, that the baby died and I don't have to worry about another child. So Gary said, let's get in touch with the family through the the publishers of the book. We managed to get hold of them. Unfortunately, Bianca and Girolamo had passed away, but they had 3 children. One was born in Rhodes, one was born in another island, and the other one was born in Italy, and we managed to get hold of them. And so we started connecting with them. And then we read on that story, and we understood that it was Bianca she was pregnant at the moment with a second child. She got on a bicycle and went all the way to a village near Rhodes, near a city called Trianda, where the Turkish consul had taken refuge because his house and headquarters had been bombed. And she said to him, listen, there are quite a few Turkish passport holders that have been interred by the Germans in those barracks, and you are like God. It's up to you to save them. And gave the name of my granny and some other people. I think there were about 45 in all. He said then to her, I will think about it. So she rode back home on a bicycle. And the next day she rode back again to find out the answer. And he said to her, yes, I will do something about it. He made a list of those people who were entitled to Turkish passports. But he put my parents there too, although they were Italian, because my granny said to him, you say me, what am I going to do about myself? What about my children? Anyway, he went back to the barracks there, the headquarters of the army, and the Gestapo opened the gate for him. He read out the names of the people who were entitled to freedom under his protection, The gates were open, and my parents and these other 40 people walked out safely. And my father, the only thing I remember my father saying, he was a director of a bank and also other headquarters. There were lots of warehouses there, big business, and there were lots of Jewish people working for him, and they were all there in this headquarters begging him. Abramiku, is short for Abraham. His name was Albert in Italian, but Avram in Hebrew, and they called him Abramiku. Save us, please save us. And he couldn't do anything, and he had to leaving them behind, and it was heartbreaking. So that's how we survived. A few days later, the whole community was taken about to Auschwitz to die. Only a few survived.
Very few survived.
Very few survived. Well, 45 was saved by the Turkish consul, and I'm not quite sure how many managed to survive. I think that 50 or 60 survived the camp, because they went there. It was July, and by January Auschwitz was liberated by the Russians, so they were not there that long, but most of them were gassed, so, including my friends. So we were saved by the Turkish consul, who was a Muslim, and by the Italian family, who were Catholics. So we decided to approach Yad Vashem and mention this family who kept me for a while. In fact, they were sending me to church to become a Catholic, and I was going every day to this priest who was showing me how to pray in Latin and make the sign of the cross. I mean, I was only 8 years old. It was absolutely bewildering, but there I was learning how to become a Catholic. I think I was baptized too, I can't remember.
How long did you stay with the Italian family?
That's the whole issue. Not very long, probably a week, you just don't remember.
But that was the fatal week that saved your life.
Yes, then once my parents left that headquarters and they were saved by the Turkish consul, they went back home and I went back to them. But we still lived in fear because my father had to present himself every day to the Gestapo. I don't know why, because what could we do? It was an island, we couldn't run away. And one day he came back absolutely in tears. They told me that we must also get ready. There are ships coming to take us. They decided to take us along too. And I was going up on the roof to watch when the ships were coming. But eventually he went back to Gestapo to present himself, and they were not there. Apparently it was almost the end of the war, and they all took the boats themselves to run away, and we were left behind. So we were saved a second time. And then it was January, and we were starving. There was nothing to eat. And we were told by the Germans still left there, the Turkish people who have Turkish passports, they want to go to Turkey, they can go, but you've got to find your own means of transport. So we found 3 boats, very little boats for the 45 of us. And after waiting for it's winter and it's very stormy weather, and after 3 days waiting for the waters, the sea to be calmer, we decided to embark and go over to Marmaris, which is the nearest port to Rhodes. On the way there, unfortunately, our boat sprang a leak and we started drowning. So we threw the luggage overboard. My father had a hat, started taking the water out, trying to make the boat lighter. We just didn't seem to be able to cope with it. We were drowning, and I was crying, I don't know how to swim, I don't know how to swim. And another miracle happened. Somebody saw a sailing boat on the horizon and started started waving and shouting, and they saw us. And they threw a rope and tied us all the way to Marmaduke.
That's
So we
incredible.
were saved. That's 3 miracles now we were saved. So we spent the last few months of the war in Marmaris until the end of the war. Then we went back to Rhodes Island. And I was there 3 years. I went to a Greek school, waiting for a visa to go to Rhodesia. Because my uncle, that was my father's only brother, had left just before the war and established himself there. So there was no future for us left in Rhodes Island. The whole community gone, all our money gone, there was nothing.
It must have
We
been very
decided to-
difficult to return to Rhodes Island
But
without a community anymore.
for me, as a child, you get used to anything. I learned Greek, I had Greek friends, I used to walk up to school. It didn't mean much to me. I can't imagine what it meant to my parents. But we found everything there as it was. But then, during this whole story I'm telling you, I forgot to tell you that the Germans were coming around and collecting anything that was valuable from the houses, like sewing machines, cots, pianos. So they came to the house to take the pianos away. My mother was a piano teacher, a lovely pianist, and lots of Italian friends into music. They used to do a lot of music together. So in walked this group and said, "We've come to take the pianos." And my mother said, "But how can you take the pianos away? I'm a piano teacher, can't do that." She was very upset. And the leader of that group said, "We're sorry, but we have to take the piano, but this time we'll take one." "Which one shall we take?" She said, "None of them." But anyway, they decided to take that upright piano that you see there. I don't know if you want to take a
I'm going to
picture
take a
of
picture
it,
afterwards. Yeah.
which is, they're both Steinways, which are very valuable piano. So they took that one, but my mother said, "Wait a minute, I want a receipt that you're taking my piano." And then she put down the number of every piano's got a registration number, the color of it, the make of it, and she put it in a bag. And all the time the soldiers laughing, where will she find the piano? So after we came back from Turkey, my mother started looking for the piano. And she heard that the piano was in the governor's house. That time the governor was a British guy, because the British had liberated the island. His name was General Parker, I remember clearly. And she sees the piano there in the lounge and said, "I want my piano back." He said, "Well, I can prove it, that's yours." And she presents the receipt. I just couldn't believe. I looked at her very funny, how could she have a receipt from the Germans?
It's incredible.
And so we got the piano back, and that piano went with us from Rhodes to Rhodesia, became Zimbabwe, and that's here in Cape Town.
I'm just going to show our viewers what it looks like. So this has got such a history. And this is the piano that the Germans
Yes,
took,
yes,
and your mum asked for a receipt.
yeah, and we got it back.
Unbelievable.
So it's pretty older.
Do you know how old the piano is?
Well, it arrived in Rhodes Island when they got married in 1934. It was a gift from my father from my grandfather to my mother when they got married. So it came all the way from Hamburg to Rhodes Island.
Wow.
Then we were left with the grand piano. It's not actually this one, but it was similar to that. And they didn't want my parents didn't want him to come back and get the other piano, but how'd you hide the piano? So they removed the legs. You see,
You can remove the
board,
legs, yeah.
and found a square box, put the piano there, a mattress on top, and a slit on it.
Wow.
piano was saved. When we came back from Turkey to Rhodes, we found everything there because one of my father's directors kept everything for us.
Nobody took over the house.
Well, it wasn't our house, but everything was there. The furniture, the piano.
Nothing was stolen.
Everything was there
That's
because we
amazing.
had this person there. Although, I mean, there was no money left or anything like that.
Lina, can I ask, when your father took you to the Italian family, do you recall when he gave you over to the Italian family for safekeeping?
Well, I remember is being there and playing with this little baby who was about a year old, a little girl, and I was happy to be with a baby, you know, this child's like a doll for me, but I must have been very nervous.
It must have been very difficult to say goodbye to your father, to be separated.
At that age, I thought maybe I'm on holiday, who knows? I didn't know what happened. They never told me that they were going somewhere or something was going to happen. They just made it like a joke, like a holiday. And that's what's nice now, that when we went to Calgary and we met at the airport, it was like, now she's in her 70s, I'm in my 80s. After all these years, 70 years, we see each other and keep in touch. And it's so affectionate, you know, absolutely beautifully affectionate. And there's a picture of them. I don't know where I put it.
And with the Turkish diplomat that saved, are you in touch with his family or?
Well, what happened? He died. What happened is there was a reception here many years ago to honor diplomats that saved Jews. And the Holocaust Center had just started.
This is in Cape Town.
In Cape Town. And I was traced to Zimbabwe as one of the survivors by the Turkish consul that was coming here. And they asked me whether I wanted to come and meet him. Well, of course, we came. And unfortunately, he was already in his 80s. He got too ill to travel, so he didn't come. So I never met him. But his son came instead. And you know what happened is that the Germans were not happy with the consul saving the Jews, and we heard that the Luftwaffe was the German plane sent and destroyed his embassy. And his wife was there in the house, and the embassy was downstairs, the house was upstairs. She was expecting at that moment, and she was injured. So the next day, she gave birth to a boy, and she died.
Wow.
So this boy, who was now in his 60s, came instead of his father to this ceremony here in Cape Town. So I asked him, how did he feel that he never met his mother, never knew his mother, because his father saved me?
That's such a question, such a profound question.
So he said, you know, he was sent away, he was a baby now, he was sent away to Turkey for his grandmother to look after. That was the paternal grandmother. The maternal grandmother, on hearing that the daughters died, she committed suicide.
Oy, what a tragedy.
All because the consul saved a few Jews. So anyway, I asked this Ahmed, his name, or Mehmet, sorry, his name is Mehmet. By the way, the consul's name is Ulkumen. Selahattin Ulkumen. The son was Mehmet. I said, how did you feel when you heard that you never knew your mother? Because now I'm here. He said, you know, when I was about 7 years old, I was reunited with my father, and he told me the whole story. And he said, if I had to do this, I would do it again. Because I'm sure your mother would have wanted me
Sure.
to.
Wow.
We lost one person, but we managed to save 45.
And this was a Muslim
That's what he
Turk,
said.
a Muslim
That's what
Turkish diplomat.
What did the son told me, the father told him when he was 7 years old. So I didn't meet him, but so he was also honored by Yad Vashem. His name is there, of course.
Is one of the righteous,
Yes.
Chassidei
Yes.
Motalam,
And
one of the
now
righteous.
Turkey's also honoring him. In fact, they made a stamp.
I've seen the stamp.
You've seen the stamp?
When we went to the Turkish in Istanbul, in the
Yeah.
Jewish Museum,
You've
I
seen
saw
that?
the stamp,
You've
sure.
seen the stamp. So now they're honoring him, and that's why they have they show this at the consuls or embassies all over the world to honor this man.
And are you in touch with any of the other Turkish Jews that were saved? Any of the
There are not
descendants?
many around.
But were you in touch through the years?
One was my friend Izzy, who was still on the island. He stayed there. Unfortunately, he also died. Then we met some of them in Rhodes Island, but they all dispersed all over the
Did
place.
any other come
Nobody
to Rhodesia?
in Salisbury, Rhodesia was
They
the
didn't
only
come.
one. Even here, I was the only one saved by the Turkish consul. That's why Mara Osran, she was the director of the Holocaust Center. She started it here, found me and called me to come here from Harare to meet him, and unfortunately it was too late.
But you met the son.
Yeah. So I don't know if I've forgotten anything.
And Lina,
else.
when the Turkish embassy asked you to make the documentary,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a tremendous honor to.
Well, I was only too pleased to honor him, you know.
And now this documentary that you made is being shown all over the world.
As I showed you.
Yeah. It was shown in Georgia not long ago.
She told me all over Europe, in Russia, and I don't know which other.
And this is, if we
embassies.
can show for our viewers, this is the documentary
See,
that
it
was
shows
made.
a Turkish passport that saved us. You see there
Yeah.
on the cover.
It's a Turkish passport. It's a visa for that
See,
passport
but
was a
that's-
passport for life.
Because that passport.
Your grandmother's decision
that's my
to,
mother's passport, Turkish passport.
because she kept that
Because
passport,
she gave that passport.
you here today.
Yes. And there's another one. Well, this was renewed, and there were a few. So another one I've seen to the Holocaust Center in Washington. It's there. Because they want, when Spielberg came to listen to my story, it's recorded there, they wanted to know whether I could send a passport to the Washington Center, which I did.
And do you have any other copies, any other passports?
I can have a look.
This is unbelievable. Thank you so much. Lina, you just said something quite amazing, that no one in your family, thank God, were killed in Auschwitz or in Poland.
My immediate family. My mother's parents were in Greece. They were headed by Greek families, 3 different Greek families. We don't know who they are. We're trying to find out, but we don't have any dates or idea where they were. So that's 3 of them. My other aunt went to, what was that place? Tangier. Tangier was opposite Italy, somewhere in Africa.
It's North Africa.
Lots of Jews went there and they were saved. She went with her husband, so she was saved.
They left Italy.
And my uncle had already gone to Rhodesia with this family. And, you know, and the others were in Turkey. The rest of the family were in Turkey. It was neutral, so they all left for Israel. Because my mother was a Cori, C-O-R-I, and they left for Israel. And we lost touch completely.
But thank God no one in the family.
I suppose one could find them now. But it's amazing how we didn't lose any member of the family. we survived intact. Not that we were such a big family.
Amazing.
But as I said, my father lost all the workers that he had under him.
They were all sent to Auschwitz.